When all is said and done, what will you say? Will you say that you shifted expectations, or the ground shifted beneath your feet?
Hi, welcome to episode 17, Purposeful Engagement. This week we invited Antonia Beggs to come on the Shift PanelCast. Antonia has previously been Head of Partnerships and Fan Engagement for Cricket Australia. And in the next couple of weeks, she'll be joining TLA over in the UK as General Manager of Partnerships and Fan Engagement. As you will hear, Antonia is incredibly purpose-driven, and we had an absolutely fantastic chat hearing about her career. Enjoy episode 17, Purposeful Engagement. Welcome to episode 17 with Antonia Beggs. Lovely to meet and see you again. That didn't make sense, did it?
Hi, great. Thanks for having me. It's exciting.
So you're down in Melbourne at the moment?
Yes, down in Melbourne. And I know I sound like I've got a cold. I have, but full disclosure, I had a COVID test yesterday and it came back the same day negative. So I'm in the clear and being responsible.
Fantastic. And CT, you're joining us from Bondi.
I'm in the hotspot. Well, not anymore, but it was the original hotspot for New South. So.
And you're COVID free.
COVID free, and just bunkered down.
Fantastic. Well, last time I spoke to you, Antonia, you were in lockdown in Melbourne, and we didn't even have any cases here. So we've kind of role reversed there.
Yeah, we have.
And you're being able to go around the countryside getting a flat tire today.
Yes, although sort of news coming out today in Melbourne, obviously that there's been seven cases today with the MCG being an exposure site last weekend. So I think our world is probably about to change again. But like everything, not that we're getting used to it, but we're getting used to the fact that our world changes very quickly right now. So it's living in the present until it changes, I guess.
Yeah, totally. And hopefully we'll have more people vaccinated very soon. And you know what? We're able to deal with this way better than we were last year with our business. It's way more manageable, especially when it's just cities that are locked down, not a whole country. So it's definitely way more positive than 2020 was.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, how we usually start these is just a bit of an icebreaker. So just for us to get to know you a bit more, can you tell us about your favorite event of all time, either one that you've attended or worked at?
Oh, great question. Although then it would take a whole hour to try and pick one. I am going to say the greatest event I've attended of all time is the men's downhill skiing in Europe called the Hahnenkamm, which is in Austria, in Kitzbühel. And pretty much sort of slightly outside of my comfort zone. I've never worked in skiing or anything like that. But when we were planning for the Ryder Cup and how we were going to build structures on hills and what that would look like, we went to basically the Alps to have a look at how they build all their infrastructure for fans on the mountains. We went there for 3 days, and having always said the challenges of building major events on greenfield sites for golf, I basically shut my mouth after about 5 minutes. I saw what these guys had to do, and sort of seeing helicopters airlift Audi Quattro signage to be able to stage it on the side of basically a cliff. But there were many reasons why I loved it. One was because it was somewhere completely where you wouldn't think you could have a major sporting event. It was definitely the spirit of the men's downhill. Like this was, the Hahnenkamm is the one that's the most dangerous.
I love watching downhill. I'm not a skier. I'm a snowboarder, but I came from the sports world. And I tell you what, a downhill race is extreme.
It is. And just, I guess, the bravery of the athletes is like just them and the elements. So you've kind of got the pinnacle of why people get up each day to become a professional athlete. And then kind of the glamour of it being a men's downhill event in Austria, which I'm always a sucker for. I call it the fairy dust. But, I was in this hospitality structure, and it's kind of like all of the kind of sports celebrities, but not celebrity, I guess sports glamour, but also the doers and the movers and the shakers were all in one place. So you kind of had, you had Arnold Schwarzenegger, you had Christian Horner, Jerry Halliwell, you had the owner of Red Bull. Yeah, and then you had Ellie Goulding singing, but it was done in such a kind of authentic way. It was really weird, but I felt I was kind of in a James Bond movie, but with my best mates. And I kept sort of pinching myself, and we had sort of this amazing glamorous experience. And then we were out in the town of Tyrol afterwards with all the fans drinking, Austrian beer, until about 4 o'clock in the morning, and then ended up in someone's ski chalet, carrying on. Like,
Someone's
it was just
doing tobacco.
It had everything.
Effect, right?
Jägermeister.
Absolutely. I had no idea what to expect, and it was on a completely next level. And it had sort of high-end VIP experience, but also, climbing up a mountainside with the fans cheering on the guys coming down the hill, and engagement from there to everywhere. It was epic.
It's such a beautiful part of the world too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't usually jump in on my favorite events. Actually, I usually let CT do that. But I don't know if you know, but I'm from the snow sports world originally. So my first ever job was with GB, and so I was one of my first assistant technical delegate jobs was at the World Championships in Kreisberg, and it was the exact same thing.
Oh wow!
And I was sat at dinner next to Prince Andrew, and then I was like at a pub with someone offering me chewing tobacco and what was that drink Schlager one that cuts your mouth. I was like, this is bizarre. This is awesome. There's not been many other events like that though.
Well, I don't have any royalty stories, so.
Oh no. Well, I felt very lucky to have gone, and it did definitely teach me some humility around dealing with the elements and unexpectedness of putting on a major event on the side of a mountain. Yeah,
and you've put on many major events. So you spoke briefly about the PGA Tour before. So you jumped back into the world of sports and sports marketing about 25 years ago.
Yeah, so I would say
tell us a bit about that.
That makes me. I'm suddenly thinking it can't be that long, and actually, terrifyingly, it is. Yeah, I sort of started working in sport in 2000. So yeah, 21 years ago, October 2000. So we're heading up to it.
And that was up in Edinburgh, wasn't it?
Well, no, I was at Edinburgh University, and then. But I started in sports was with the European Tour, which was down at Wentworth, but obviously working on Scottish Open and a lot of the events in Scotland, but also Dubai, Portugal Masters, so some great events all over Europe. But yeah, started in 2000, and then find myself in Melbourne, but about to leave Melbourne to head back to London 21 years later, but still in sports management. And
we're going to get to your position of leaving Australia soon. But when you got into events, was it the events part of it? Was it the brand activations and partnership activations, or was it the sport?
For me, it was actually the industry. I guess I started right from the outside, and we've talked about this before, but I guess I'd come from a background where my only frame of reference for a job was going to be a lawyer, an accountant, or a banker. So a very traditional background. If you've got to get qualifications, I was useless at science, so doctor was ruled out at an early age. But it was kind of you've got to get another qualification after your degree under your belt, so you'll always be secure, you'll always be employed, and you'll always have a job. And so I was kind of in between. I got a master's degree in economics, and then it was am I going to do law? Am I going to do banking? And I actually started on a graduate trainee scheme in banking. And I did that for a couple of years, and I was okay at it. It's just my heart didn't sing. And I could tell that it probably wasn't right, because my brother and my dad both worked in banking, and they would chat the whole time. And I could get involved, but I was sort of rather wanting to go and watch the sport on TV and sort of think about what my career should be. And so I thought, you know what, I went to Wimbledon. I was really lucky with my job to be hosting people at Wimbledon. And I'd never been to Wimbledon, and I loved tennis. Sport was something that I was really connected to. And I thought, my God, there are people here that are actually working. Like, they actually have a job at Wimbledon. And it hadn't really occurred to me you could work in sport. And so then I sort of saw these people whizzing around with like walkie-talkies and shades and, you know, flashy lanyards and just generally looking awesome in nice gear. And I was like, I want to do that.
First times that I noticed event people.
Yes.
And I remember going,
that's it.
Oh, I can do that. Like,
I know.
And personality. Yeah.
Absolutely. And how do you do that? And you know, can you imagine getting up every day and that's like what you do? So I sort of had a sort of long sort of discussion in my head, I guess, thinking, right, okay, what does this mean for me and how do I do it? And I kind of did some research, and I just realized my network at sort of in the early 20s, I knew I could talk to lawyers and bankers, but I just really didn't know anyone in sport. So I didn't know how to kind of get into it. So I started with someone who knew someone at IMG, you know, and it was almost before email. It was kind of pick up the phone and say, or write them a letter. How do you get into sport, etc. And at the same time, I'd actually applied to start with College of Law to do my law degree, because I just thought, look, banking probably isn't for me, so maybe it's law. And I thought maybe I'll be a sports lawyer. So that was where the IMG kind of connection came from. And I got sort of some feedback basically saying, if you want to get into sport and you're a woman, the best thing to do is to be a secretary. So learn how to type, that's kind of
ridiculous
stuff. And
but that's the reality of the 2000s. And Antonia and I had this discussion.
It wasn't like that in Australia at the time, I would say.
But I was basically told the same, and I was in a secretary assistant position. And
you don't have like it's. I mean, I'm like, look, I've got a master's degree in economics. I can do modeling for corporate finance. Okay, but I've got to basically learn how to type 60 words a minute.
Oh my God!
And
that's crazy.
You know what? It was. And then I sort of ironically was talking to, again, a mate of a mate who had just sort of finished law school and had, while she was going through law school, got a job as a secretary at the European Tour. And then she was going off to be the lawyer. And she said, oh, well, listen, I can get you an interview. You know, you're kind of the right person for golf. You're kind of right accent, right upbringing. You know, as long as you can type quickly, you might have a chance.
And typing quickly, but you also got to read all those documents, right? So you got to learn.
Well, this was the whole thing. Yeah, it was actually the best way to get in, because coming from an economics and history degree, my job is to kind of assimilate. It wasn't my job, it was my degree, but to assimilate a whole load of information and then spout it out in a concise and informed manner, which is basically what I was then doing. But at the beginning, I wasn't even allowed to be in the meetings. I was the secretary to the secretary. I was an assistant secretary. Wow. So I wrote up the notes and did the teas and coffees. And to give the guy that first interviewed me, he was like really concerned. He just said, listen, you've got a really good CV, and are you sure you want to do this? Like, it's pretty menial tasks. And I said, well, if it's involved in the industry that I love, I'd love to just give it a shot. And from the first day, I was happier than I'd ever been in any job, temporary or training or whatever it was. And genuinely never looked back. Like, I never thought what I was doing was menial, because it was so goddamn interesting. and I was learning something every single day. And yeah, thank God I did. And they were kind enough to promote me as and when, and I kind of worked my way up the tree, I guess.
And then you, in very short summary, you got headhunted for Cricket Australia after how many years? 11 years?
Yeah, so I was at the tour for 13 years, and I worked my way up from being an assistant secretary to a secretary up to staging director for Ryder Cup, promoter for the Irish Open, and then head of commercial partnerships. So I kind of, in the areas of where I could probably add value, I'd sort of achieved and been part of some fascinating projects. And I just had got to the stage of, I'm always a what's next, not because I get bored, but just if I don't feel I'm adding as much value as I can or impact, then it's like, where can I do that? And I did at the time also have 2 young children. My husband also was working in sports. And so both of us were traveling. Our kids were getting brought up by a nanny. And I remember us just crossing in the night and kind of going, is this what we really signed up for? And as much as we both loved our jobs and we were working in an industry which you love, so it's more your life, it can begin to define you. And we kind of just sat down and said, look, we probably need to take a reset. And literally a week later, I got a phone call from a headhunter who'd been in touch with me about a job, funnily enough, at Wimbledon the year before, just saying, listen, there's a role that we think is really suited to you. The only downside is it's in Melbourne. And I was like, that's the upside, because I'd come traveling in my year off. I'd come to Melbourne because I loved sports even then. I remember when I was 26, I wrote to IMG in Australia, will you give me a sponsorship? Can I come and work in Melbourne? So then to have this opportunity to interview, and the fact that it was with cricket, yes, I've never worked in cricket, but I loved sport, and it's the national sport of Australia. I couldn't pass it up. And, I felt I was very lucky I got the job, because...
What was the role?
So the job that I came out for was head of match operations and events for international cricket. So basically being part of leading the delivery of international cricket for Cricket Australia. And I sort of had a series of interviews, and then I was flown out to meet. I had 24 interviews in the 2 days that I was here.
Wow.
And I remember my last interview with James Sutherland, who was the CEO at the time. And I don't think James will mind me saying this, as he asked me, he said, right, imagine you're at the Boxing Day test, 90,000 people. It's the Ashes, because it was before the Ashes, the last series 4 years ago. And the sight screen gets jammed, and you've got the Australian cricket captain shouting at you, how do you cope under that pressure? And I didn't know what a sight screen was. So, which for those of you who don't know what a sight screen is, it's basically the thing that stops the bowler, the batsman being distracted when they're trying to hit the ball. And it's quite critical, but it's very operational and very cricket. So if you haven't worked in it, you haven't really paid attention to it. So I just sort of said to him, well, I would imagine you have like a head of cricket operations. And it's like, yeah. And I said, well, he would obviously be with me, and we'd have those discussions, and then we'd sort of make a decision, et cetera, et cetera. And I just said, look, I don't know everything about cricket. And I said, but how many people at Cricket Australia do? And he was like, everybody. And I was like, well, do you want another person that knows that? Or do you want somebody who's going to just focus on the fan experience, fan engagement, but also knows how to make the trains run on time, and that's what I could do. So he took a punt, which was great. Birthday today, same day as my brother's, so I know that. And this is 4 years to the day that we landed in Australia.
Oh, really?
So,
and you are leaving soon. What?
Yeah, so
be leaving within 4 years.
Yeah, so literally 4 years. Well, we're leaving in 2 weeks, and basically again, like I came over here in that job, and then I was then given an amazing opportunity 18 months in to be the interim EGM for broadcast and commercial for a year, which was maternity cover for one of my colleagues who actually got offered the job the day before she went on mat leave. So it was a great opportunity for me, because I kind of wasn't stepping into the shoes of somebody who'd been there for 2 years who was then coming back, and I'm known as a bit of a circuit breaker. So if I'm given the reins, then I will run with them until someone pulls me back. And I did that for a year, which was epic. And then off the back of that, when my colleague Steph returned, I moved back into a new role, which was head of partnerships and fan experience. And the partners kind of moved into our division, and that match operations is just trying to focus people more on the fan. So I've obviously been doing that role, but which has been really interesting in COVID, and happy to talk about that later on. But where we're currently at, again, it comes back to always putting your family first, right? Is we're we've got elderly parents on the other side of the world, international borders are shut, kids are now old enough that education wise, where we make the next decision, we're in that country for the next 10 years. And so it's like very torn, because we love our life here, and I have loved working at Cricket Australia, but there are things that are more important than your job. So we made the decision a couple of months ago to really think about going back home for a couple of years. And so I then started talking with some of the agencies that I work with, and TLA Worldwide, who are pretty well known here in Oz, who do obviously a lot of talent management and major events and fan engagement, so right up my street. They've just been they've been purchased by Bruin Sports Capital, private equity company. Half of them, 50% of the business has been bought by them, and Bruin also own Two Circles in the UK, and TGI, which is a big major sort of LED stadium entertainment business. And so there's some real opportunities to join up those agencies, with kind of the fan being at the center and working with rights holders to do that. So
that really is where your passion sits, right? As fan engagement.
Exactly. Yeah.
Going back to when you first started saying Cricket Australia, what was it you were brought in to change or to enhance in the fan engagement?
Yeah, and listen, Cricket Australia is a big rights holder, and it's very successful, and it gets lots of fans. So it wasn't sitting there going, oh my goodness, we're failing, we need Antonia Beggs from the outside of the world. Like, it was none of that. Like, they were flying, they'd just done the Big Bash, and they had an Ashes coming up. But Cricket Australia itself only began to really own the rights of international cricket from 2014. It used to be done by states and territories, and it had all come in under the mothership of CA, still very much owned by the states and territories, but the actual commercial rights came under the arm of Cricket Australia. And so it's actually a very young company when it comes to putting on major sporting events. It's only been doing it for a couple of years. And so my role was to kind of help accelerate it out of being absolutely brilliant at delivering the event, and then just shifting your focus, not forgetting where that is, let those people carry on, but going, right, you've got over 3 million Australians coming through your doors every summer to matches. How do we let them know that they're loved? And it's not just something they turn up at a venue, sit in their seat, watch the cricket, and kind of led by the venue. Yep. So my role was really, first of all, sorry, Chris, you're going to say something.
Oh, no, sorry. I'm sorry to cut you off. You go.
No, go. No, I was going to say, no. First of all, it was really, go for it.
All right,
I've got this bit out.
I was going to say, Cricket Australia is definitely, very forward thinking when it comes to that, and enhancing the experience. And we've certainly had a fair bit to do in the past with Vodafone and Cricket Australia and the likes, and the fan engagement and just enriching that experience at the stadiums. It has always been something that both Cricket Australia and the partnerships team, in engaging the brands as partners to come on and do that, has always, been really heavily looking forward. And it's really highly regarded in Australia as one of the top 2 or 3 sports that, doing that. Up there with Melbourne Cup, Open, really sits in that sort of same space.
Absolutely, and that's kind of exactly what we've been trying to drive, and I think the relationships with you have these incredible venues with loads and loads of seats that you need to fill. Like, you don't have that. I wouldn't even say it's a luxury back in the UK, but you don't get stadiums that big, especially for cricket. Lords is 25,000 people a day. Like, imagine 25,000 people turning up for the Boxing Day Test. It would be a disaster, right? So,
well, I tell you what, that is one of the most incredible things to see. That Boxing Day Test is it just seeing people lining up from so early in the morning to filling that place is incredible.
Absolutely, and people, fans spend a lot of money to be able to come, and they get up early, and it's Boxing Day, and they're probably feeling a bit ropey, and you want to kind of. For us, it's been all about gratitude and saying thank you, right? So they're still a customer, they're still using their disposable income, they're choosing to come, and so what we really have focused on probably in the last 4 or 5 years is we call them the moments to master, which is what we say are the dials that switch someone from watching on TV or on our digital channels and saying, do you know what, I'm actually going to go. I'm going to go to the game and I'm going to experience it. And that we try and keep it as simple as possible. If what we do doesn't answer one of those 5, we just don't do it. And we engage our partners to do that. And the 5 for us are, the first one is player connection. So I think it's 90% of why people come to a game is to feel closer to the players. So for us, you would have seen that's either drive signing autographs, the money can't buy experience, but whether that's through your mobile phone and our apps, you've got Tim Payne saying thank you, or you can screenshot and do all the fun stuff, avatars, whatever it is, make yourself feel closer to the players. It's around our that social experience. Only 3% of people come to the cricket on their own. So then when you've got to think about it, you've got basically everybody is coming there with somebody to share in a social experience. And actually the venues themselves, only per stadium has kind of breakout spaces for non-members. So if you're not a member of the MCC, there's not many places in the stadium where you can sit around and hang out with your mates apart from your seat. Oh, right. And so that's something.
Get them outside. Get them outside. That's where they end up, right? Out and around the engagement.
Exactly. But they could then end up in Richmond, which is fine. But then they're off over there. So hence that's where the Indian Summer Festival was born. Is let's work with the government. Let's create a big festival in Yarra Park. Let's keep them all enclosed, come in and out of the cricket. The Pink Village in Sydney, we did the same thing, just build a village outside the SCG that creates that wonderful feeling of a major event. And same with the Gabba. So, and even at Monaco, we've done that. They've got some lovely outdoor spaces we've changed up. So for us, that kind of social experience is really important. And then there's that, enrich the match experience, which is more about kind of give the fans something for free, or give them a greater value. So that's normally where you'll see a singer at halftime, or fireworks, or just stuff that's happening in bowl that's really good fun and really entertaining, that's over and above a cricket match, just to give them that sense of value add, I guess. And again, coming back to the thank you. Yeah. And then the final one for us is actually to get people to genuinely come to a live event, is for them to actually know the detail of it, like the information, like where do I park my car? How do I get there? How much will it cost? What the food's like? I'm bringing my kids. Is there shade? When is coin toss? So we've really invested in our match day app, which is part of our CA Live app, but also working with the venues. So it's all the same information. They all talk to each other. You don't have Ticket Tech, MCC, Cricket Australia all telling you different start times or whatever that looks like. So, and that's kind of it sounds relatively simple, but that's our focus.
It's amazing how many events, when you look around, how many events don't have those simple things, or the marketing, or the marketing is like, oh no, we need to be tricky and not say what the date is, but actually it is actually just quite frustrating, and maybe marketing's moved on from that point, right, where people do just want to be straight up. And it sounds like, in the last 4 or 5 years, I know from sort of a wider perspective, when you look at brand activations as a whole across sport, they've gone from very much talking at to much more engagement and honesty and authenticity.
Yeah, exactly. And be brave enough to have the two-way conversation. If the food's bad, tell us. So I think that's been the fun stuff that you would have seen. So whether that is the lawn or the boundary socials, these decks that we're building within the stadium, because unless it's an Ashes, we don't sell out, right? So it's you've got dead seats. So actually, let's invest with a partner on building like an incredible experience to view it, but rather than sell it for $500 per person and it just become another corporate hospitality space, use it either for one of our charity partners or surprise and delight or whatever that looks like. And then, as you say, you get that organic conversation with people having great fun. And listen, the customer experience has definitely improved because it's had to, but you've always got to keep improving. Every single year you've got to keep challenging yourself, because we all know people who have a shocker.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think given like obviously technology is we've raced ahead in the last year, but in the last 4 or 5 years it's come along amazingly. But also the network capabilities has made such a difference around stadiums. As in the past, this has always been a bit of a problem with that many people in a stadium to be able to do those sorts of things. So technology-wise and network-wise has come along amazingly, which is really enhancing people's experience of in-stadium events as well.
Yeah, completely. And I think even taking that to sort of the level now that we're beginning to look at, and probably that's why I'm moving to an agency as opposed to a rights holder, is it's so sophisticated now, working with the ticketing companies and data around who is coming, what they need, where and when. So like, everyone's got their own avatar. That if someone's coming in gate 6, and depending on who they are, they're going to be hungry and they're going to want chicken, right? Like there's a whole load of stuff that you can do that's tailoring the experience to the specific individual that's coming out of thousands of people who then go, I love this. But then obviously there's a subliminal element of, okay, but also you really want to buy a Toyota. So now we're going to start like matching, a Toyota segmentation with our audience segmentation. So I think probably what's really grown in the last 4 years has been the physical match day experience and those moments to master. And now we're shifting to customer data strategy, revenue opportunities through that really engage the partner because they have such a strong opportunity to talk directly with segmentations that are really important to them. And cricket, as a wide-ranging sport, is a huge opportunity in that space.
And you're talking about data being, key to there, like you're saying, being able to pick up people as they're coming through. Do you think AI is going to be a factor of that? Seeing people, understanding, what they're looking for and picking them up without having to, go through a data point?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's already happening. And it's just ensuring that it's for the right reasons at the right time, because people, the customer, we talk a lot about, and Hayley's talking about it then, like authenticity and owning up. You kind of don't want to be subliminal. The whole joy of sport is its natural spontaneity.
Yeah.
So you absolutely have to keep that front and center. But it's trying to remove the pain points of coming to a live event through getting to know your customer more and just giving them that extra sort of feeling of joy when they're there so that they want to come back and share and talk about it.
I think we've discussed previously, Antonia, that you were saying technology is to be used as the tool, and it's fantastic that we have these tools and this greater understanding to be able to then provide an experience with purpose.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And for it to actually kind of make sense and ensure, because ultimately, if you think of cricket's purpose, is to unite and inspire communities, right? So you're coming back to, okay, well, why are we doing that? Well, we want to bring this community together. Okay, Indian Summer Festival. We want to bring the Indian communities in Melbourne. We want them to feel front and center of an activation that's happening in their city that they may not normally feel front and center of. So it's still a very, in a way, one-dimensional delivery, which is a festival. However, in that festival, the use of technology to be able to connect people through conversation, dialogue, and music, player activation, whatever that could be. And I know we talked about it, but probably the best example that I've seen of using that to ensure like you unite and inspire and bring a community together through technology would be a Brazilian football club were losing a lot of their members, and they wanted to grow their membership basically, which any sports club in the world wants to do right now, because the membership is the customer, and the customer is the data, and the data is the opportunity. And so what they actually did was there is a huge stigma around organ donation in Brazil, and it's one of the lowest in the world when it comes to people donating their organs. And so what this club did is said, right, when you become a member, you can become an organ donor, and it will go to another fan of the club. So you will live on as a fan, kind of through somebody else. And basically what happened is everybody signed up to the organ donation, because there was someone sort of saying like, my eyes will always be able to watch my club play even when I'm no longer here, or my heart will still beat for the club. And so the use of sport, and then be able to connect through technology for an outcome that is unbelievably a higher purpose or value, which whatever the ethics are, as in that's sort of that bubble, to really drive social change like that is phenomenal. And I think that's where sport can go if it aims that high.
I was just going to ask, and I'm not sure, Hayley, I'm sorry if you were going to ask this, but around the ICC, the World Cup last year, and in a similar vein, the enormity of how how that was in Melbourne last year, and the number of people who came out to see the final. And I guess we always talk about like you have to see it to be it, and that kind of thing in sport, and for women's cricket, and for young girls growing up to be able to see that and see in their hometown this huge event that they could maybe be a part of, and to be able to dream like that. I mean, how was that to be a part of?
Yeah, and listen, there are many people that would be talking to this a lot closer than I would. I guess the first thing is Cricket Australia actually, they put it on the map, and it was written into our 5-year strategy. Use the T20 World Cup as a springboard for generating and inspiring young girls and women, right? And that was there on every meeting, everything. There it was, right in front of you. And obviously then you have the LOC for the ICC, led by Nick Hockley as the CEO of the T20 World Cup. And straight away it was like, it used to be the World Cup T20 or whatever it was. It was like, nah, we're calling it the World Cup. Right, we're going to have the women's event separate. We're going to take a punt. We're not going to sort of piggyback on the back of the men. The investment alone in doing that, the cost is huge, because obviously, from an infrastructure perspective, you're totally splitting two major events. So that's kind of like, this is what we believe in. Then we're going to go for the biggest stadium in Australia, because we're not going to shy away from the fact we might not get crowds, and we're just going to put that, fill the G, basically. And it comes back to simplicity, right? When you have one idea and one aim, which is fill the G, everyone gets behind it. And that's exactly what happened. And then, okay, we're gonna have it on International Women's Day. Like, we're just gonna add layer and layer and layer after layer to make this bigger than just a women's cricket event, because it was a statement.
And
right?
actually, yeah, it's not even just about filling the G, right? It's actually about, let's change behaviors, let's change perception, like women in sport is equal. And that was for cricket to come out and say that was incredible. I think that's what you were saying there, CT, is that women enforce.
And for the fans to come out and say that too.
Yeah,
they came out in numbers, and it put a stamp and said that's what that is now. And I'm a dad of 2 young daughters, to be able to show them that, and for them to be able to see that, I think those are the things that change. As Hayley's saying, it's behaviour change, and it's something that can really make a difference.
Absolutely, and it is having that, not having the fear of failure, right? Because if you don't set up with that goal, because we want to do this, like, James Sullivan was passionate about it. He was part of that whole thing, and I noticed it as soon as I arrived. It's like, come on, guys, this is not good enough. We've got to get better. We've got, like, the train hasn't even left the station, and it was okay. As you say, fill the G was the outcome. Yeah, but it was about putting women's cricket at the centre and forefront of what we do, and not even calling it women's cricket. Like, this is a cricket match, and everybody is invited, to be part of something special, so that Melbourne and Australia can turn around to the rest of the world and go, look at us. We are walking our talk.
We're game changers. Right?
Yeah,
that's what it's about. And inspiring the next generation too, which I think is really, really important. And in your position, Antonia, you must, I suppose that would be a drive throughout your whole career, is to actually change behaviors, change perceptions, engage people, enhance lives. And is that been sort of I suppose your biggest drive is to go home? I would,
and
to keep stepping up your career.
Yes, and funnily enough, it's more around, where I can use what I know to add the most impact to be able to do that. Like, I don't mind if I'm back to being a secretary, if it's making a difference, I guess. Because, and I like touch wood, like, I've been really lucky, I've come from a loving family who supported me. I've had a great education. I've met incredible people. And that's got to be for something. Like I said, I'm not clever enough to be the doctor to save lives, and I'm not probably a good enough public speaker to be a politician or whatever that may be. But I genuinely see the power of sport to impact positive social change. And being a woman or a young girl who absolutely adored sport, but understood, like, when I played tennis was different, actually, because it does seem to work well on both genders. And maybe that was like the Wimbledon final, the Wimbledon women's final, Wimbledon men's final, they seem the same, right? But that's pretty rare. But I just realized growing up, okay, right, it's men's soccer, it's men's rugby. But I was like, but I feel that I'm just as good at it, and I want to be involved, and I want to do something, like, you follow your heart on that. And then if you can have a job that's going to pay that back and continue to remind people in the room that there's still a massive gap, I'm not afraid to do that and find interesting ways to kind of bring that to the fore of the conversation without ramming it down people's throats, I guess, because there is still a long way to go.
And so what do you think are, like, the biggest opportunities for the next generation, or the biggest challenges in the future of sort of the world of technology-based entertainment and activities?
I think, look, when it comes to technology, say, if we're talking about technology in sport and or maybe just not even in sport, just the younger generation with technology, is it's distraction, right? You know, and you can see that left, right, and center. Technology itself, again, I've talked about, it's not a bad thing. Technology, when I watch my kids and they're playing Minecraft together, they're chat, it's like they're building a Lego set. But it's when you use it as a distraction. And like, I listened to a fascinating podcast the other day. You know, what does distraction mean? You know, it's taking away from traction, and traction is to move forward. Distraction is to pull back. And when you use that technology for things that aren't like going down the rabbit hole of reading news, which is actually meant to be negatively wired because that's what stimulates us to read more, that's the kind of stuff where there is the danger around technology and what it makes you do. But technology is a force for good, you know, bringing it back to sport. The pink test this year, the McGrath Foundation, you know, Holly Masters, the CEO of the McGrath Foundation, and I were chatting last July. She's like, what are we going to do? We're not going to make any money in the test this year. Like, this is the chance we get to raise, you know, for our nurses. And it's like, okay, well, let's think about how we can do this virtually. And, you know, the idea of the virtual seat was born, and, you know, book your seat, even if you're not there, feel you're there, put your name on it. Something incredibly simple, pay $35, and they raised $3 million in 3 days. So technology is an incredible force for good.
Yeah. But, you know, I also feel like this future generation, or in us, you know, we're all looking for more of a purpose now. And the future generations are just going to want that more and more, but using technology as a tool. I think it's going to be super important.
Absolutely. And I think that's where we've probably been spending, say, the last 6 months, and again, looking forward to doing this for TLA, is looking at that, the Gen Zers, right? The Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas, which is kind of my kids' age, 13 and 9, is they are complete digital natives. You know, even saying to them the use of technology, they're like, well, what do you mean? Like, it's just life, right? They had iPads when they were born. I mean,
my kids asked me this morning why some people can't use PCs and Macs, because they don't understand. It's just all the same to them.
Yeah.
And I was like, well,
exactly.
Some people weren't brought up on PCs and some weren't brought up on Mac, and they're just like, but it's just a compute. Like, you know, they were mind blown that people would,
and I think
even as two different things as a desktop.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in a way, it's less about the platform, it's more what's on it, because they know, like, for them it's just user material, like they're just interfacing. But what for them, you know, like when you look at the Generation Z, and you see that already, and it comes back to the Brazilian football team and what they were doing, is they have the luxury to be incredibly purpose driven, and you are seeing the major brands shifting towards doing that. So they're not price sensitive anymore. They're about, you know, sustainability, the environment, you know, like, if I spend this money, where is it going and what will it do and what is its impact? And that's the really exciting part, that, you know, technology can absolutely help. We saw that with the bushfires, like how much money was raised through social media. That's because that generation are just having the conversation, and you know, you can't hide. You know, it is all about being authentic, and you're seeing the brands like Patagonia, Nike, you know, they're leaning into that, and the consumer is responding. And so I think that's probably the next step with sport, is sport can unite and inspire. It is a platform for positive change. It can connect. How does it maintain its relevance with the distraction of what all the other, you know, the Gen Zers could be doing? It's through purpose. Really focus on what that is. And to our point around women, you know, you'll still find, I think, in nearly all the rights holders, the commercial teams will be selling the men's properties first, right? And then there'll be somebody going, oh God, I've just got to quickly sell this women's, and they don't want to. They're all amazing people. They're just all incredibly busy and overstretched. Mm-hmm. But actually, the opportunity is spend all your time on those women's properties, because they are the future, and it's what the younger generation will want. And
Yeah,
that's the gold, I think, that I'm really excited about.
Amazing. Just before we sort of wrap it up, do you have a recommendation of an audio book or a book or podcast that you would recommend for any of our listeners?
Well, I guess that the first thing that I'm going to say is I would love to pretend to be incredibly well read and always on podcasts and doing all of that stuff. And I actually
busy though.
I know. I actually have a folder that says things I must read, kind of to seem clever. And I just never do it. I'm actually thinking maybe the 27-hour flight home, I might finally get up to speed on the stuff that I should know. But no, I would say there's a couple of books. One is Good is the New Cool, which is around purpose-driven marketing, which is written by Afdel Aziz, who's based in LA, and we've worked very closely with him. He actually spoke at our last partner summit, and he talks a lot more succinctly than I have around Gen Z and purpose, and it's a very well written book, but hugely inspirational if you want to play in that space.
And that's Good is the New Cool.
Good is the New Cool, which is actually out of print because it's been so successful, but it's coming back into print in October. I only know that because I was looking to buy it for somebody as a leaving gift.
Sure, we can get an Audible or...
Yeah, of course. And then there is Discover Your True North by Bill George, which is around authentic leadership. And I was lucky enough to go on a course with Ben Crow, who's a mentor of mine and an inspirational individual here in Australia, around the Connection Project and how people connect through authentic leadership. So if you're managing teams, but even if you're not, it's more around how do you want to show up each day. Discover Your True North is a great way to find out what motivates and drives you.
Yeah, right. Very, very last question. The event you're most looking forward to attending?
Oh, well, if COVID doesn't exist, which it will do, but in a world that I would be able to attend to go to an event, that's a tricky one because I'll be headed back home.
Yes, you'll be able to go to things.
I know. Well, I don't know. Although it's getting to look a bit dicey again. But I reckon I'd love to go to the Paris Olympics. So 2024.
Good one.
I've kind of got that in my sort of head of, just for Europe and for France. I think it would be a really fascinating experience.
Yeah, we were planning on going to Tokyo last year, obviously, before everything happened.
Yeah.
And just, do you know what? I've never been to an Olympics, and yet I'm so passionate about sports, so passionate about events. I don't know why I have just always seemed to miss where it was going to be. And just to see an opening ceremony in the Olympics, just to see that epitome of world-class event. Paris would be absolutely incredible.
Yeah, well, let's put it on the radar.
Fab, I might meet you over there.
Absolutely.
That sounds like a plan.
What about you, CT? What event are you looking forward to going to next?
Well, I was thinking more along the cricket lines. I'd love to see the Ashes at Lord's. I just can't. I think such rich history, and having seen it quite a lot of times in Australia, I think it would be amazing to see there. So that's one I have on my list for sure.
So, well, maybe 2024.
I'll see you at that. Well,
I'll see you there too.
Yes.
Right.
We can do a holiday over. Antonia, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. Your career is fascinating. Your purpose is fascinating. Your experience is fascinating. And it was just really, really lovely to have a chat and to get to know you over the last few weeks.
Great. Well, look, thank you for having me. And best of luck, guys. Hope you get out of lockdown soon. And I also just hope Australia gets the summer that it deserves with the Ashes and the tennis and hopefully some other great sporting events, because it's an awesome country to watch sport in. I will be watching from or listening, I should say, in the freezing cold in January, going, why did we move back home?
Totally. When the sun's
back.
Thanks, CT and Antonia. That was episode 17 of Purposeful Engagement. Had an absolutely lovely chat with the both of them. It was incredible to hear about Antonia's career and where she's going to and how she's moving forward and moving the world of sports forward in brand engagement. If you have any suggestions of anyone within the industry that you think would be great for us to interview, please feel free to send me an email, hayley.mason@the-shift.agency. You can also check us out on Facebook. We've got a Facebook group, the Shift PanelCast, request to join. Otherwise, we'll see you next month.
When all is said and done, what will you say? Will you say that you shifted expectations or the ground shifted beneath your feet?